I never thought silence could be so loud. That's what I remember most about that night at Whispering Pines winter camp. The way the snow seemed to swallow every sound, leaving behind something that wasn't quite silence. Something that felt alive and listening. My name's Marcus, and what happened to me and 3 other people in those frozen woods 5 years ago still keeps me up at night. The authorities called it a tragic incident. The news reported it as unexplained disappearances, but I know the truth, and honestly, sometimes I wish I didn't. It started in December 2019. I was working as a maintenance supervisor for a corporate retreat center in northern Maine, about 40 miles from the Canadian border. The place was called Whispering Pines, though I never understood why until that night. When the wind moved through those massive evergreens, it really did sound like whispering, like the trees were sharing secrets they didn't want you to hear. The camp was supposed to be closed for the season. We'd shut down operations in early November, drained the pipes, boarded up the main lodge. But then I got a call from my boss, Jerry. Some tech company had paid premium rates for an exclusive winter wilderness experience for their executives. 4 people, 1 weekend. They wanted the full isolation package, no cell service, no electricity in the cabins, just gas lanterns and wood stoves. Jerry asked if I'd stay on site as the caretaker, make sure the executives had everything they needed, keep the main lodge heated, handle any emergencies. The money was good, really good, enough to cover my daughter's spring tuition, so I said yes. I should have said no. The executives arrived on a Friday afternoon in 2 SUVs, Jennifer, Brian, Tom, and Rachel. They were in their 30s and 40s, wearing expensive outdoor gear that still had the tags attached. City people playing at being rugged. Jennifer seemed to be the leader, constantly checking her watch even though I'd already told them their phones wouldn't work out here. "This is perfect," she said, breathing in the cold air. "Complete digital detox. Just what we need for team building." I showed them to their cabins, small A-frame structures scattered about 50 yards apart through the woods. Each had a wood stove, a stack of firewood, and thick wool blankets. The main lodge was where they'd take their meals, about 100 yards down a marked trail. "Dinner's at 6, I told them. "Don't wander off the trails after dark. The woods get confusing real quick, and we've had bears spotted in the area. If you need anything, ring the bell outside the lodge. I'll hear it." They nodded, but I could tell they weren't really listening. They were too busy taking pictures for Instagram, even though they couldn't post them. Tom was already complaining about the cold. That first night was normal. We had dinner in the lodge, venison stew I'd prepared that afternoon. They talked about their company, some startup that had just gotten bought out. They were celebrating. They drank wine and laughed too loud, the way people do when they're trying to convince themselves they're having fun. I left them around 9 and headed to my quarters, a small room attached to the back of the lodge. The plan was simple: let them have their corporate bonding, stay available if needed, collect my check on Sunday. But around midnight, something woke me up. At first I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it again, a sound that made my blood run cold. It was coming from outside, from the direction of the cabins, a low rhythmic thumping, like someone beating on wood, or trying to break through a door. I pulled on my boots and coat, grabbed my flashlight and the satellite phone we kept for emergencies. The temperature had dropped hard, probably close to 0. My breath came out in thick white clouds. The thumping had stopped. I made my way down the trail toward the cabins, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The snow had started falling again, thick flakes that muffled every sound. That's when I noticed something strange. There were footprints in the snow, lots of them, leading from the cabins toward the tree line, but they didn't look right. The prints were too deep, too far apart. Like something big had been walking on 2 legs but taking steps no human could manage. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded small in all that emptiness. "Everything okay?" No answer. I reached Jennifer's cabin first. The door was closed, smoke rising from the chimney. I knocked. "Jennifer, It's Marcus. Just checking in. Silence. Then from inside, "We're fine. Go away." Her voice was flat, wrong, like she was reading from a script. "You sure? I heard some noise." "I said we're fine." Louder this time, almost aggressive. I backed away, uneasy. Checked Brian's cabin next. Same thing. Door closed, smoke rising, and when I knocked, his voice came back hollow and strange. "Leave us alone." Tom's cabin was dark. No smoke from the chimney. The door was slightly ajar. "Tom," I pushed it open. The cabin was freezing. The wood stove gone cold. Tom's sleeping bag lay empty on the cot. His boots were still by the door, but his coat was gone. And there, on the far wall, someone had carved words into the wood with something sharp. The letters were jagged and deep. "It wears us." My hands started shaking. I backed out of the cabin and immediately headed for Rachel's place. Her cabin was the farthest out, nestled in a thick cluster of pines. As I approached, I saw her standing outside in just her nightgown, barefoot in the snow. "Rachel!" I ran toward her. "Jesus Christ, you're going to freeze." She turned to face me. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't seeing me. She was looking at something behind me. Her lips moved, whispering something I couldn't hear. I grabbed her shoulders. "Rachel, we need to get you inside." Her hand shot up and gripped my wrist with impossible strength. Her skin was ice cold. And then she spoke, but it wasn't her voice. It was deeper, layered, like multiple people talking at once. "It's already wearing them. Soon it will wear you too." I stumbled backward, and she released me. Then she turned and walked back into her cabin, moving stiffly, like a puppet on strings. The door slammed shut behind her. I ran back to the lodge, my heart hammering against my ribs. Something was very, very wrong. I needed to call for help, get these people out of here. But when I reached the lodge, I found all four of them sitting at the dining table in the dark, just sitting there, not moving, not talking. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked. "Tom, I thought you were..." They turned to look at me in perfect unison. Their movements were identical, synchronized, and their eyes... God, their eyes were wrong, empty and dark and hungry. "Join us, Marcus." Jennifer's mouth moved, but that same layered voice came out. "It's so cold out there, so lonely, but in here, we're never alone, never cold, never scared. We're all together now," Brian added in that same wrong voice. "Forever and ever," Tom whispered. "And ever and ever," Rachel finished. I backed toward the door. "Stay away from me." They stood up together, moved toward me together, still perfectly synchronized. That's when I saw it, behind them, in the shadows of the lodge. Something tall and impossibly thin, made of darkness and winter cold. Its limbs were too long, bent at angles that hurt to look at, and where its face should have been, there was just a shifting void filled with stars that weren't stars. It was wearing them, using them like masks, like costumes. And it wanted to wear me too. I bolted out the door and ran through the snow and the darkness, away from the camp, away from that thing. My flashlight had fallen somewhere, and I was navigating by moonlight and pure terror. Behind me I could hear footsteps, 4 sets of feet moving in perfect rhythm, crunching through the snow, and underneath that, another sound, like breathing, but wrong, too wet, too hollow. I don't know how long I ran, hours maybe. The cold should have killed me, but fear kept me moving. Eventually, I found a fallen log and crawled underneath it, packed snow around myself, tried to become invisible. The footsteps passed by, slow, searching. "Marcus!" Jennifer's voice called out. "Why are you running? We're your friends. We just want to help you understand." "It's beautiful, Marcus," Tom added. "Being part of something bigger, never being alone again." "Don't you want that?" Rachel asked. "Don't you want to be complete?" Their voices faded into the distance, but I stayed hidden until sunrise, shaking so hard I thought my bones would break. When dawn finally came, I made my way to the main road, flagged down a logging truck. The driver took one look at me and didn't ask questions, just drove me straight to the sheriff's office. They sent a team up to Whispering Pines that afternoon. Found the lodge empty, the cabins empty. No sign of Jennifer, Brian, Tom, or Rachel. No footprints except mine. The only evidence that anyone had been there at all was Tom's message carved into his cabin wall. It wears us. The investigation went nowhere. The executives were declared missing persons. The camp was shut down permanently. Jerry collected the insurance money and retired to Florida. But here's the thing that still haunts me. About 3 months later, I was in a grocery store in Portland, and I saw Jennifer, standing in the produce section, examining apples. She looked perfectly normal, healthy, alive. I froze. Our eyes met. She smiled at me, a normal smile. But behind her eyes, I saw it. That darkness, that hunger, the thing that had worn her that night in the woods. She put the apple in her cart and walked away. And I watched her go, too terrified to move, too terrified to call out. Because I realized something in that moment. The thing didn't just wear people that one night. It's still wearing them, walking around in their skin, living their lives, waiting. I see them sometimes, you know, the ones it's wearing. You can recognize them if you know what to look for. The way they move just a fraction of a second off from everyone else. The emptiness behind their smiles. The cold that seems to follow them. They're everywhere now, and sometimes late at night, I wonder, how do I know it isn't wearing me too? How do I know I really escaped those woods? How do any of us know? The scariest part isn't what happened at Whispering Pines. It's that I still don't know if I'm the one telling the story, or if it's the thing behind my eyes, speaking with my voice, wearing me like a mask, just like it wore them, just like it might be wearing you. I've always been the kind of person who finds peace in solitude, the quiet of the wilderness, away from the noise of everyday life, used to be my sanctuary. But after what happened during that winter camping trip 3 years ago, I can't look at snow the same way. I can't sleep in silence anymore, and I sure as hell will never go camping in winter again. It was early February when my buddies backed out of our annual winter camping trip. Work emergencies, family obligations, the usual excuses. I was disappointed, but I'd been planning this for months. The campsite was already reserved at Coldwater Basin, a remote spot in the mountains known for its pristine winter beauty. I figured a solo trip might be exactly what I needed. Some time to clear my head, reconnect with nature, you know the drill. I should have taken their cancellations as a sign. The drive up took longer than expected. A late-season snowstorm had dumped nearly 8 inches overnight, and the roads were treacherous. By the time I reached the trailhead parking area, the sun was already sinking behind the mountains, painting the snow in shades of deep orange and purple. The ranger station was closed, which struck me as odd, but I shrugged it off. It was late in the day, after all. I loaded up my pack and started the 2-mile hike to the campsite. The trail was buried under fresh snow, making each step exhausting. My boots crunched loudly with every movement, the sound echoing through the silent forest. And it was silent, unnaturally so. No birds, no wind rustling through the pine branches. Just my breathing and my footsteps. About halfway to the site, I noticed tracks in the snow. Boot prints, human ones, heading in the same direction I was going. They were fresh, probably made within the last hour. I felt a small wave of relief wash over me. At least I wouldn't be completely alone out here. Maybe another winter camping enthusiast with the same idea. But as I followed the trail, something about those footprints started bothering me. They were erratic. Sometimes they'd veer off the path into the trees for a few yards, then come back. Other times, they'd stop abruptly in the middle of the trail, as if the person had just stood there for a while, then continued on. It reminded me of someone who was lost, or confused, or maybe drunk. When I finally reached the campsite, the light was fading fast. The area was a small clearing surrounded by towering pines, with a stone fire pit in the center and a weathered picnic table half buried in snow. And there, on the far side of the clearing, was another tent. A small dome tent, dark blue, completely zipped up. "Hello," I called out. My voice sounded small and swallowed by the forest. No response. I stood there for a moment, watching the tent. There was no movement, no sound coming from inside. The tracks I'd been following led right up to it and stopped. I waited a few more seconds, then called out again. Still nothing. Look, I'm not the kind of person who gets easily spooked, but something about that silent tent made my skin crawl. I decided to set up my own camp on the opposite side of the clearing, as far from the other tent as possible. As I worked, I kept glancing over at it, half expecting someone to emerge. But the zippered door remained closed, and the tent stayed perfectly still. By the time I had my shelter up and a fire going, darkness had completely settled over the mountain. The temperature was dropping fast, my breath coming out in thick clouds. I heated up some soup on my camp stove and tried to relax, but my eyes kept drifting to that tent across the clearing. The firelight didn't reach that far, so it was just a dark shape against the darker tree line. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe the person was already asleep. Maybe they'd gone for a walk and weren't back yet. Maybe they'd left earlier and forgotten their tent. I was trying to convince myself of that last one when I heard it. A sound coming from inside the tent. Not a voice, not exactly. It was more like a wet, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across fabric. It lasted maybe 5 seconds, then stopped. My heart was hammering now. I stared at the tent, waiting. The sound came again, longer this time. Drag. Pause. Drag. Pause. Drag. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice cracking slightly. "You okay over there?" The dragging stopped immediately. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the sound itself. I sat there frozen, the spoon halfway to my mouth, soup forgotten. Then, slowly, the tent's zipper began to open. I don't know what I expected to see. Maybe a sick camper, or someone playing a prank. What I saw instead was darkness. Complete, absolute darkness inside that tent, even though my fire should have illuminated at least part of the interior. The zipper kept moving, inch by inch, with that distinctive ripping sound that seemed impossibly loud in the stillness. But nothing emerged. The opening grew wider, and still there was only that impenetrable darkness inside. Then I saw the hand. It came out slowly, gripping the edge of the tent's opening. The skin was gray, almost blue in the firelight, and the fingers were wrong. Too long, with joints that bent at odd angles. As I watched in frozen horror, a second hand appeared, then a head. I can't adequately describe what I saw. The face was human, or had been at some point. But the features were distorted, stretched, like a photograph that had been pulled and warped. The eyes were open but completely white, no iris, no pupil, just milky whiteness that seemed to glow faintly. The thing started pulling itself out of the tent, and that's when I noticed it wasn't wearing any clothes. Its body was emaciated, ribs clearly visible, skin hanging loosely over bones, and it was making a sound now, a low, keening wail that made my teeth ache. I don't remember making the decision to run. My body just moved, survival instinct overriding everything else. I grabbed my headlamp and bolted from the clearing, leaving everything behind. The fire, my tent, my gear, all of it. I just ran. The trail back to the parking lot was a nightmare. My headlamp beam bounced wildly as I stumbled through the deep snow, and behind me I could hear that thing following. Not running, but moving with a horrible, lurching gait. And it was fast, impossibly fast. Branches whipped at my face, and several times I fell, my hands plunging into the icy snow. Each time I could hear it getting closer, that wet, dragging sound now accompanied by a clicking noise, like teeth chattering, or bone scraping against bone. I don't know how long I ran. Time lost all meaning. At some point, I realized the sounds behind me had stopped. I risked a glance over my shoulder and saw nothing but darkness and snow-covered trees. But I didn't slow down. I couldn't. When I finally burst out of the trailhead onto the parking lot, my lungs were burning, my legs were cramping, and my face was cut and bleeding from branches. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them twice in the snow. The whole time, I kept expecting to see that thing emerge from the trees. My truck's engine roared to life, and I've never been so grateful for a sound in my life. I gunned it down the mountain road, taking corners too fast, not caring about the ice or the snow. I just needed to get away. I didn't stop until I reached the highway, 20 miles from the mountain. Only then did I pull over, my entire body shaking uncontrollably. I sat there for nearly an hour, watching the road behind me, making sure nothing had followed. The rational part of my brain tried to make sense of what I'd seen. Hypothermia causes hallucinations. Maybe someone had dosed my water. Maybe I'd hit my head and didn't remember. But deep down, I knew what I'd witnessed was real. I never reported it to the authorities. What would I say? That I'd been chased by some kind of monster? They'd think I was crazy. Instead, I just never went back. I abandoned hundreds of dollars of camping gear, left my tent and supplies for whatever that thing was. But here's the part that keeps me awake at night. About 6 months after it happened, I was scrolling through local news online and came across an article. 3 hikers had gone missing in the Coldwater Basin area. They'd gone up for a winter camping trip and never came back. Search and rescue found their campsite, tents still set up, gear untouched, but no sign of the hikers. The article included a photo of the search area. I recognized the clearing immediately. It was the same campsite I'd been at, and in the background of the photo, barely visible among the trees, was a dark shape that didn't quite look like a tree trunk. I zoomed in on my phone, my hands starting to shake again. It was blurry, but I could make out what looked like a figure standing in the shadows. The proportions were wrong, the limbs too long, the posture twisted and unnatural, and it seemed to be looking directly at the camera. I deleted my browsing history and closed the article. But I can't forget that image. And sometimes, late at night when I'm trying to sleep, I think about those tracks I followed into the campsite. The erratic pattern, the way they'd wander off the trail and come back. What if they weren't the tracks of someone lost or confused? What if they were the tracks of something hunting? Something that had learned to mimic human footprints to lure prey deeper into the wilderness. I moved to the city after that, somewhere with lights and noise and people. Somewhere that thing, whatever it was, couldn't follow. At least that's what I tell myself. But 2 weeks ago, I woke up at 3 in the morning to fresh snow falling outside my apartment window. And when I looked down at the alley below, I saw footprints in the fresh powder. Boot prints leading up to my building's entrance. They were erratic, wandering from one side of the alley to the other. Just like the ones I'd followed up that mountain. I haven't opened my door since then. I have my groceries delivered and leave them in the hallway for an hour before bringing them inside. My neighbors probably think I'm paranoid. But I know better. I know it found me. And I know it's patient. Sometimes, late at night, I hear that wet dragging sound outside my door, and I see shadows moving in the crack underneath it, blocking out the hallway light. Shadows with too many joints, too many angles. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know what's out there. If something happens to me, if I disappear like those 3 hikers, maybe this will serve as a warning. Don't go camping alone in winter. And if you see tracks in the snow that don't quite make sense, tracks that wander and weave like something drunk or confused, don't follow them. Turn around. Leave. Get as far away as you can. Because whatever leaves those tracks isn't human anymore. And it's always hungry. I've always loved winter camping. There's something peaceful about the snow-covered silence, the way everything feels muffled and still. But after what happened at Blackwood Valley in January of 2019, I haven't been able to look at snow the same way again. Some things are meant to stay buried under the ice. My name's Jake, and I'm telling you this because I need someone else to know what really happened out there. The official report says we got lost in a storm, that 3 members of our group succumbed to hypothermia. But that's not what killed them, not even close. It started as a simple winter camping trip with 5 friends from college. Me, Sarah, Marcus, Devin, and Lisa. We'd been planning it for months. A 4-day expedition into Blackwood Valley, a remote area in northern Montana known for its pristine winter landscapes. The park ranger at the station gave us a strange look when we filed our permit. "You folks sure about Blackwood?" he asked, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Most campers avoid that area this time of year." "We're experienced," Marcus assured him, always the confident one. "We've done winter camping before." The ranger nodded slowly, but I noticed he held on to our permit a moment longer than necessary. "Just, if you hear anything strange at night, stay in your tents. Don't go investigating." Sarah laughed it off. "What, like bears? They're hibernating." "Not bears," he said quietly. Then he stamped our permit and handed it back without another word. We should have asked what he meant. The first day was perfect. We hiked 6 miles into the valley, the snow crunching under our boots, our breath forming white clouds in the frigid air. The temperature was dropping fast, already 15 degrees below zero, but we were prepared. Good gear, plenty of fuel, emergency supplies. We set up camp in a clearing surrounded by towering pines, their branches heavy with snow. That night, we built a fire and sat around it, trading stories and passing a flask of whiskey. The stars were incredible, millions of them scattered across the black sky like shattered glass. For a while, everything felt right. "This is what life's about," Devin said, gazing up at the Milky Way. "Getting away from all the noise." Marcus raised his flask. "To silence and solitude." We all drank to that. Around 11, Lisa pointed toward the tree line. "Did you see that?" "See what?" I asked. "I thought I saw something moving, out there between the trees." We all turned to look, but there was nothing. Just darkness and snow and the twisted shapes of pine trees. "Probably just a deer," Sarah said, though her voice had lost some of its earlier cheerfulness. "Deer don't move like that," Lisa insisted. "It was, I don't know, tall. Really tall." Marcus threw a stick into the fire, sending up a shower of sparks. "You're seeing things. It's dark out here. Our eyes play tricks." But I'd seen it too. Just for a second. A shadow that seemed too vertical, too deliberate to be a tree. Something that had been watching us. We turned in around midnight, splitting into 2 tents. Marcus, Devin, and I in one, Sarah and Lisa in the other. My sleeping bag was rated to -40, but I still felt cold as I zipped it up. Not the cold of winter, something else. Something that settled into my bones. I was almost asleep when I heard it. A sound like breathing, deep and raspy, coming from just outside the tent. But it was too loud, too heavy to be human. Each breath seemed to last 10 seconds, a rattling inhale followed by a wheezing exhale that made the tent fabric flutter. "You guys hear that?" I whispered. "Yeah," Marcus breathed. "Don't move." We lay there in absolute silence, listening. The breathing continued, circling our tent. Slow, deliberate steps in the snow. I could hear it so clearly, the crunch of footsteps, the labored breathing, the occasional grunt that sounded almost curious. Then it stopped at the tent entrance. I could see its shadow through the nylon, a massive shape hunched over, swaying slightly. My heart was hammering so hard I thought my chest would burst. The zipper began to move, not quickly but slowly, deliberately, as if whatever was out there was learning how it worked. "Marcus," I hissed. "Marcus, it's opening the—" A scream cut through the night. A woman's scream, raw and terrified, coming from Sarah and Lisa's tent. The shadow at our entrance disappeared instantly. We heard it run, not with footsteps, but with a strange galloping sound, like something moving on all fours despite being tall enough to stand upright. We exploded out of our tent. Sarah was outside, collapsed in the snow, sobbing. Lisa was still screaming from inside the tent. "What happened?" Devin yelled, running to Sarah. "It looked in." Sarah gasped, her whole body shaking. "It unzipped the tent and it looked in at us, and oh God, its face." Marcus and I reached Lisa's tent. I pulled the zipper down and found her pressed against the far wall, her eyes wide with terror, her sleeping bag soaked with urine. "Lisa, we're here. You're safe," I said, reaching for her. She pointed past me with a trembling hand. It smiled at me. When it looked in, it smiled. We pulled both women out and got everyone around the fire, building it up until the flames were 6 feet high. We sat there, weapons drawn. Marcus had his hunting knife, Devin had a hatchet, I had my bear spray, scanning the darkness around us. "We need to leave," Sarah said. "Right now. We hike out." "It's -20 degrees and pitch black," Marcus argued. "We'd freeze to death or get lost in 30 minutes. "Better than staying here with that thing." "What was it?" Devin asked quietly. "What did you see?" Sarah and Lisa looked at each other. Finally Lisa spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "It was tall, maybe 7 feet, but hunched over. Its arms were too long, hanging down past its knees. And its face—" She closed her eyes. Its face was human, almost human, but wrong. The proportions were off. Its mouth was too wide, and when it smiled I saw teeth. So many teeth all the way back. "And it was naked," Sarah added. "In -20 degrees, it was completely naked. Its skin was gray like something dead." "That's not possible," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We all heard it," I said. "We all heard something." We stayed by that fire until dawn, taking turns keeping watch. Nobody slept. As the sun finally rose, painting the snow orange and pink, we began to pack up. We'd hike out at first light, permit be damned. That's when Devin found the footprints. They circled our entire camp, enormous footprints, easily twice the size of mine. But they weren't bear prints. They were humanoid, with 5 distinct toes, but elongated, stretched out. And there were handprints too, pressed deep into the snow, showing where the thing had dropped to all fours. The prints led away from camp, deeper into the valley. "We follow the trail back the way we came," Marcus said firmly. "Nobody follows those prints." But as we shouldered our packs, Lisa pointed to something that made my blood run cold. Our footprints from the day before, the trail we'd used to enter the valley, were gone, completely covered by fresh snow. We'd had a storm during the night, and I'd been so focused on the thing outside our tent that I hadn't noticed. "We can use GPS," Devin said, pulling out his device. He stared at it, then shook it, then stared again. "No signal. That's not right. I had 4 bars yesterday." Marcus checked his phone, then Sarah, then mine. No signal, any of us. "We follow the sun," Marcus decided. "East. We hike east and we'll hit the road eventually." So we started walking. The forest felt different in daylight. The trees seemed to lean toward us, their branches reaching down like skeletal fingers. The silence was oppressive, no birds, no wind, nothing but the crunch of our boots in the snow. After an hour, Devin stopped. Are we going in circles?" "What are you talking about?" Marcus snapped. Devin pointed to a tree with a broken branch. "I marked that tree when we passed it 30 minutes ago." "You're wrong," Marcus said. But he didn't sound sure. 10 minutes later, we found our own footprints, fresh ones, from 5 minutes ago. "This isn't possible," Sarah whispered. "We've been walking in a straight line." "The valley is messing with us," I said. "The snow, the cold, we're getting disoriented." But I didn't believe that. None of us did. We tried again, this time Marcus leading with a compass. We walked for 2 hours. When we stopped to rest, Lisa let out a strangled sob. We were back at our campsite. The ashes from our fire still smoldered. Our tent sites were clearly visible. We'd walked for 3 hours and somehow ended up exactly where we'd started. "Okay," Marcus said, his voice shaking now. "Okay, we set up camp again. We wait until tomorrow. We try again. It's going to come back, Lisa said flatly. When it gets dark, it's going to come back. She was right. We tried to stay awake, but exhaustion and cold got to us. Around 10 p.m., I found myself drifting off despite the terror. That's when the breathing started again. This time it was closer. This time it didn't stay outside. I heard the zipper of Sarah and Lisa's tent opening. I heard Sarah wake up with a gasp. Then I heard something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. A wet, crunching sound, and Sarah's scream cutting off mid-breath. We rushed out. The tent was open. Lisa was huddled in the corner, covered in blood. Sarah was gone. Just gone. There were drag marks in the snow leading into the darkness, and that same galloping sound moving away from us. Marcus grabbed a flashlight and started to follow. I caught his arm. "Don't," I said. "That's what it wants." "That's Sarah. We can't just—" A voice called out from the darkness, Sarah's voice. "Help me, please. It hurts. Help me." Marcus tore away from me and ran into the trees. Devin ran after him. I stood there, frozen, as their flashlights bobbed between the dark trunks. "Jake," Lisa whispered beside me. "That's not Sarah. Sarah is dead. I saw what it did to her." "Help me," Sarah's voice called again, but this time it sounded wrong. The pitch was off. The words came out strangely, like someone speaking phonetically in a language they didn't understand. "Help me, please. It hurts. Help me." The exact same sentence. The exact same inflection. It was playing a recording. It had learned Sarah's voice. I heard Marcus scream. Then Devin. Then silence. Lisa and I ran. We didn't think. We just ran into the darkness, away from the camp, away from that voice, away from the wet sounds that had started up again in the trees. I don't know how long we ran. The world became a blur of white and black, snow and trees. My lungs burned. My legs felt like they were on fire despite the cold. Then suddenly we burst out of the tree line. We were on a road, an actual paved road. A truck came around the bend, its headlights blinding. It screeched to a stop and a man jumped out, the same park ranger from the station. He took one look at us and his face went pale. "You came out. Jesus Christ, you actually came out." He threw us in his truck and drove without saying another word. I looked back once at the valley. In the darkness between the trees, I saw it standing there, 7 feet tall, arms too long, watching us leave with that too wide smile. The ranger wouldn't answer our questions. The police wouldn't believe our story. They found the campsite, found blood, but no bodies. They said Marcus, Devin, and Sarah must have wandered off in a storm and succumbed to exposure. Their bodies would turn up in the spring thaw, but I know the truth. They're not coming back. Not in spring. Not ever. Lisa doesn't talk anymore. She's in a facility now, sedated most of the time. On her bad days, she screams about teeth and smiles and something that wears human faces like masks. I'm telling you this because I need you to know. If you ever plan to go winter camping in Blackwood Valley, don't. If you're already there and you hear breathing outside your tent at night, don't look. Don't investigate. Don't follow voices in the darkness, no matter how familiar they sound. Some things live in the cold and the silence. Ancient things that have learned to walk upright and smile with too many teeth. Things that have been waiting in those valleys since before we had words for fear. And if you ignore the warnings, if you camp where you shouldn't, they'll teach you a lesson about the dark that you'll never forget. If you survive long enough to learn it,